It's known that Banadyne has conducted classified biological research for the National Security Organization. Any reason for our viewers to be concerned?
None whatsoever. Although the research animals which were kept here have been destroyed, absolutely no...
The dog?
And one of the Oxcoms.
Are the Oxcom and the dog still telepathically linked?
On a biofrequency that only the Oxcom can receive.
Travis Cornell made a new friend today. May just cost him his life.
The dog was like a homing device. The creature, a search and destroy missile.
You know what happened to Tracy's, don't you?
Travis had a dog. No pets.
Travis, is that you?
Can't you control it? It's got to be stopped.
GH3? They're called your research animal. That's why you're so smart.
They created the perfect killer.
As long as he's with the dog, his life is in danger.
Now, how are they going to stop it?
It's up to you, isn't it? I stay, you die. And I say we make a stand right here, right now.
Stars in Watchers. From the best-selling science fiction thriller by Dean R. Koontz.
Flint PCA, this is Army 212, 7 miles northwest, low fuel, heavy weather.
Army 212, radar contact, turn right, heading 150.
With a fog-bound helicopter hanging on your every word, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, only that you're
Coming
good.
up slowly.
Roger.
Overlanding threshold.
Thanks for your help.
Roger.
Hey, all right. Welcome to the Deadman Horror Show. I'm your host, Mr. Deadman. In this episode, we're talking about captured souls. First off, do souls even exist? Second, can you even capture them? Well, if you ever dated a wicked chick, you know that possibly you can. When those goth girls are really obsessed with souls, probably have some spirit gems, soul gems, whatever you call it. I'm not talking some Skyrim stuff. I'm talking about the real deal. At least they consider it to be the real deal. Whether it actually works or not, what can I tell you? Look, do souls exist? Does the soul exist? If you're a religious man, if you believe in the Bible, then of course you're going to say yes. How can you believe in the Bible and not believe that the soul exists? If you are, it doesn't even have to be Christianity. It could be of any religion. If you are a religious person and you practice a religion where the soul is important and the soul is saved somehow through various acts that you perform while living or whatever, then yes, you believe in a soul. A lot of people believe in a soul. Now, if you're an atheist, maybe you don't. If you're agnostic, you just don't know. Pick a side. Come on now. Oh, I don't know. Figure it out. Does the soul exist? Well, guess what? We got a Russian scientist. According to a Russian scientist, the soul exists because he took a photo of it. He was able to actually capture the soul, or a soul. And why are we talking about this? There's a story we're going to read tonight called Better to Curse the Darkness Than Light a Candle. Okay, we're going to read that story tonight by Joseph Cusumano. But first, in that story, the story is about a soul. In order, like, that story is about not only does the soul exist, but you can capture it. You can capture it through candle. And I'm not revealing any spoiler, because that's the plot of the story. Very core component. But yeah, the soul exists, according to this Russian scientist, if you want to believe him. Most of you, I mean, if you are religious, like I said before, you already believe in it. You don't need this. But according to Korotkov, if I said that right, he claims he's able to capture a soul. How? How's he able to do this? He's able to do it using a particular method, a Kirlian method, to capture electromagnetically charged fields. They have a way to actually pick up electromagnetically charged fields to show like an aura. You've probably seen this before, and if you dated a wicked chick, you already heard about this before, or one of those new age hippie chicks, because they will tell you about this auras, the chakras, whatever. You can see it, and look. Let me show it to you. Let me put it on the screen. I'm not making this up. What we're going to watch here is this Russian scientist talking about how he was able to photograph the soul. Photographing the soul. Are you ready?
My name is Konstantin Korotkov, and I'm professor of computer science and biophysics in one of the leading Russian universities.
Now, first off, this Russian scientist, you know you can believe him. You know he's trustworthy because he looks like the NPC meme, doesn't he? I mean, it's...
It is St. Petersburg University of Information Technologies. In 1970s, I was introduced to Kirlian effect.
And what you're seeing there, that photograph there, that's what the Kirlian effect is. They can take photos, use a certain technology to capture this electromagnetic charge field. Is that evidence of a soul? What is that? It's you're capturing proof that there's energy that's being emitted from living organisms. It only happens with living organisms. When you die, after a while, that field is gone. It dissipates. And what they're capturing is photons and electrons and what have you. Photons and electrons. So when the person's dead, when the organism is dead, is no longer alive, that charge is gone. So is that proof that there's a soul with living organisms, not just with humans? Well, that can be, because according to the Bible, there's other things don't have a soul. Depending on what you believe, right? Hold on.
It was a committee on physical electronics that became interested in Kirlian effect. What does it mean? What's it all about? And we, our scientific group, was given an order to investigate the physical principle and to understand whether it is really scientific or it is something woo-woo. So I was given this task. So in 1978, I was able to meet Semyon Kirlian, and he delivered a lot of interesting topics about his technology, about spirituality. From 90s, after meeting Semyon Kirlian, I became very interested in Kirlian photography, and I dedicated a lot of my professional activity to studying physical processes.
See it right there. You see that? See how it's moving?
And this allowed...
It's hard to see.
Us to...
They turn off the lights, and you only see like the aura moving. Now, there's actually a better example of this. I have it right here. This footage is grainy, okay? It's low quality. It's like the 80s tech, whatever. But it's an actual audio recording of human aura and a bioenergy field, okay? This auric field is documented in a laboratory, and recorded the yellow and green frequencies in the energy field, okay? Now, some may say, oh, this is like post effects or whatever. We're talking about like 70s, 80s stuff, okay? All right, come on. Let's skip that. Okay, hold on.
The word from the body. It dynamically changes based.
All right. Sorry, this is the part we're getting into. The auras. They're actually going to show us the auras here. And these auras are affected by feeling and all that stuff. And how they capture it. They capture it using similar technology of the Kirlian effect.
Like all living things, this little dog has a sizable radiant field, even when he sits quietly. Notice now, as he greets his master, the obvious love and affection between them.
Now, you might be like, oh, that's some sort of special effect or whatever. It looks trippy. It looks weird. And we're talking about like old school 60s, 70s, 80s like tech. Like special effect? I don't think so. That's an interesting lens. I don't know what the process is to capture like an energy field around them. It's really strange.
Increases the dynamic radiation from their bodies, even the dog's tail and the man's head. No wonder so many people have pets who give them pleasure and provide a vital field of energy to interact with. Wherever there is motion in the universe, there is increased flow in the field that humans interact with. See the explosive activity from the waves and from his body. Also,
now I also want to point out that, see, like it kind of, it looks like they're blurring the area around him, and I would say not Photoshop, I would say some sort of post effect, but this is like, dude, this looks like Channel 8, like public access TV quality stuff. Post effects? I don't think so. This is, like I demonstrated here in this video, you can capture images of like I don't know if you want to call it a soul or just energy.
After meeting Semyon Kirlian, I became very interested in Kirlian photography, and I dedicated a lot of my professional activity to studying physical processes. And this allowed us to understand what should be done to make it stable, reliable, and reproducible. So we know physical principles of this device. We know that it works on quantum level. So we stimulate some subject. It may be human fingers, it may be water, any subject in the world practically. We stimulate with intensity electromagnetic field, and subject produces photons and electrons. The most important.
That's very important what he said, photons and electrons. I mean, that's essentially what you're recording there. That's what you're picking up. Is that proof of a soul? Well, you have questions, I have answers. I looked, what better place than to ask Cora, can a soul be captured? We're just going to go ahead and assume those were souls. Okay, we're moving on with the class. Souls exist, right? Whether you believe in the Bible, whether you just saw what you saw there, and you're like, you know what, maybe they do. Can you capture a soul? Well, let's see what the answers are here. Zach Diamond studied at New Jersey Institute of Technology, says a soul can be captured in a sense that a person can be a prisoner of war. There are other senses of being captured. I think this guy missed what he meant. I think he meant like a soul, like a spiritual thing. Okay, that's not going to help us here. Rajadu Barbadu resume. I don't know. Lives in France. A soul is nothing but an energy needed for a functionality of a body. It's not a spirit or anything else. A body's functionality is based on the auto mechanism. He says it can't be. He says it can't be captured. I wasn't able to pronounce his name, but he says it cannot be captured. Let's see if that holds up. John Rogers, owner at Keith Rogers Installation, it says, of course it can. When you know the truth about souls, the answer is yes. Genesis 2:7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. So a soul is a living, breathing creature. The Hebrew for soul is nefsa. I mispronounce that. Nefesh, whatever. a living creature. Don't confuse soul with human spirit. So, John Rogers knows what's up. He read the Bible. He knows what's up. Let's see. So, still not convinced if you can capture it. Let's see. Depik Singh. Singh? Yes, by using tricks. You can learn this trick with Durya Ulum Deoband and Uttar Pradesh. Islamic. In Islamic tradition, apparently you can capture souls. We don't have time for that deep dive. You got a psychologist over here, Gary, saying that you can't capture a soul. There's no evidence. But yeah, he's a psychologist. He got a degree in a field that was started by some. Psychology is a field of study started by old white men fueled by cocaine. Cocaine and a search for trying to understand you. Cocaine and penis envy, man. No. I have a little respect for psych. A little respect. All right. So, can you capture a soul? Seems hit and miss. This therapist over here, a therapist of past life regression, according to her, our souls are huge energy clouds spanning through many dimensions. Only a small part of the energy is incarnated in a body. So, maybe you can. Let's see, Deadman is a K-I-K-E? Oh, I mean, I guess so. I mean, I guess. Bronx Beat says it's so in the chat. I suppose so. He knows me better than I know myself. Let's see, it says the soul cannot be captured. However, you can lose parts of this energy in traumatic events. Our soul, which lived in a body, can get stuck in lower planes of reality as a ghost after death. Ooh, okay. I think this one is helpful. Sandy Sommers, a former ordained minister. Sure, you can capture a soul the same way you can capture a leprechaun. There's no evidence of a soul. None. Of course, makes sense as an ordained minister, a former ordained minister, a failed holy man, lost the faith. Much like PPP. This isn't Guntwave. This is Deadman Harshal. I have no idea who PPP is. All right. But can a soul be captured? Sure, I suppose so. I mean, like I said in the beginning, if you dated one of those goth chicks, a wicked chick, then you probably already know. They think so. So, all right. Still not convinced. The Chinese have an experiment for you. Check this out. Man, check this out. You don't believe in a soul? You don't think it can be captured? I'm not sure if it's Chinese or Japanese. Either way. Looks malnourished. Looks North Korean. Dropping frames. All right, so they're hooking this girl up to some device. So I'm not exactly sure what she's hooked up. She looks like she's about to be tortured, electrocuted. But this is what they claim they capture. They start shocking her. You can hear the electricity, but she's not jolted. They're summoning the spirit out of her. You see that blur? See that ghostly aura coming out from her lower parts, Coming out from her vag. Coming out from her ass. There you go. There's the soul. Out of her body. Which is weird because she's breathing. I don't know, if you look closely, she is breathing without her soul. Yeah, this is Japanese. I think this is Japanese. The Japanese have showed you could breathe without a soul. You don't need a soul. It's walking? You got it. Now this looks like post effects. It looks like they filmed what was going to be a torture session, or maybe measuring maybe they're measuring sleep. Maybe they're actually researching sleep and REM sleep or whatever. I don't know what they're doing. Or what the brain activity when you close your eyes. I have no idea. And try to take a nap. They got a soul. Oh, it's shocking. Think that's real? Oh no! What? Three phases? So this chick had like 3 souls inside her. How's this even possible? It shot ghost jizz on the freaking window. I mean, what else do you call that? What do you call that? Just sliding down. And of course, the stains are gone from the other view. That's so sloppy the post effects for. You saw that, and then from the other view, the window was clearly clean. That's crap. Now, I'll be like, come on, there has to be some other proof. Oh, good news for you. I have this. According to this YouTube video, a CCTV captured a man who died and his soul left his body. Here we go. You ready? Let's have some fun. Got a blurry mess of a man on a gurney. I don't know why they're blurring him out. I mean, you blur out the face if you don't want him to be identified. We know he's Chinese. I mean, oh, it's moving. Whoa. You saw that? Was that real? My soul left him. Why is he even trying? You can't bring him back now. Be like a zombie. I still don't understand why they blurred out the whole thing. Blurred out the whole guy. Okay, on that bed, apparently there's someone laying on the bed. I can barely tell. Hold on here. Pause. Hold on. I thought I had evidence that there was souls and they're being captured on camera. Guys, I'm sorry. I'm looking at this now and I'm not even convinced it's even a body on the bed. That looks like a bag or something. It's so far away. You see that? It doesn't even look like a body. Oh. I think this thing is going to be left a mystery. I think the skeptics might be right on this one. Oh, it floats away. It looks like... Okay, they zoom into it. They zoom in closer. You can see that that's not a person laying on a bed. What is that? Yeah, Timothy, you get permission. It's Bronx, you're being annoying. Oh, he looks like a crab monster or something. Like, he doesn't even look real. Oh, come on. The most convincing evidence so far has been the Russian scientist. And I suppose Cora. Whatever. So does the soul exist? Does the spirit exist? Can you capture it? I'm going to have to go back to I'm going to have to remember the days when I was with this Wicca chick. And she was convinced that you can get these talismans or whatever. And you can capture souls with that stuff. You put it on your window or in your room somewhere, and a spirit will come in and you just catch it like a fly on a spider web. Which is weird because I didn't know spirits and souls are just floating around like that. Apparently they are. I don't know how you know you captured anything. She says she captured like 30 of them. Like 30 of them? How do you know 30? How do you count that? And she gave them names and everything too. She said there was like Fred, Greg, Bill. I mean, they're all like basic American names. Nothing crazy or advanced, which is kind of weird. You know? It's like, I'm sensing a pattern here. Interesting girl. Crazy girl. Now, let's check out this story. Better to curse the darkness than light a candle. This story is about capture a spirit. Can you capture a soul? That is part of it. It's more to it. The story is about being overcome by greed and not listening to the advice of others. Being selfish, self-absorbed. If you follow the drama stuff in Guntwave, I could say this is like the story of an Ethan Ralph. Or even Pay. Now I understand that tonight's stream is a little struggling. What can I tell you? Buffering. I am recording a local file too. So we'll see what happens. Because I'm going to read this. And hopefully you don't lose much. All right, here we go. Better to curse the darkness than light a candle. They mockingly call me Diogenes, believing my lantern is carried merely to illuminate my path each night through the dark streets of Philadelphia. Yet it is not an honest man for whom I search, but a scoundrel, a liar, an adulterer, a thief, a murderer. Ideally someone who has been all of these, for I must find a soul darker than my own. The quest resulted from an earlier and more innocent one, first undertaken while I was a young man blissfully wed to Patience, who brimmed with optimism over what was, not content with the considerable success that I enjoyed as the proprietor of Salisbury Shipping Company. I sought more wealth, the respect of Philadelphia's business and merchant class, and especially the adoration which Patience showered upon me with each step my growing business took. On the occasion of my boasting to her that I now employed upwards to 50 men who labored on my behalf, moving goods from our warehouse to multiple sites 100 miles west, she swelled with pride in my accomplishment, and even her passions were aroused. My success was achieved before the opening of the Erie Canal in 1825. When the canal first opened, there was no appreciable loss of business, merely a slowing in our rate of growth. However, by 1829, the volume of goods shipped through the canal at a lower cost than any land route could hope to provide had created a disastrous effect on my personal economy, and to a lesser extent on all of Philadelphia as well. Even the powerful textile manufacturers were adversely affected. If my business had suffered only a loss of revenue, not all would be lost. But I had taken substantial loans from the banks to further my seemingly unended profits. Loans based upon the value of my business and personal property, including our home. As the city's fortunes declined, other borrowers faced the same issues as I, and the banks to which I was indebted ignored my entreaties to negotiate the terms of the loans that might well be my ruin. A man raised in a devout Calvinist community should never have resorted to what I did next, but had I not been taught that a man's eternal fate could be ascertained by the material success and wealth he amassed on earth? If I lost everything, would it not be proof that I had no place among the chosen? How would my community judge me? Did I begin a life of deceit, a series of mounting lies to everyone, especially my beloved? Charles, she asked on one September morning as I prepared to leave work, have not the city's declining fortunes affected your business? Hardly at all, I responded. By letting part of our workforce go, I've saved enough in labor costs that we can weather a moderate decline indefinitely. There is no need to trouble yourself over this. But what if the men and their families they no longer employ? What will happen to them? I have pleaded to each and every one of them 3/4 of their salary till they find new employment, and they were immensely grateful. Charles, what a lovely thing to do, but I shouldn't be surprised, for it's the right thing to do, and you're a righteous man. She completely accepted this fabrication, hugged me, and bestowed a passionate kiss upon me. A righteous man would be consumed with guilt by this, but I was already preparing my next lie. Patience, my darling. I want to be home for supper tonight. I have an important business meeting to attend, and will return very late. You could visit your mother tonight if you wish. She happily agreed to this suggestion. We believed work to be virtuous, but where is virtue when one can find so little to do? Incoming orders to transport goods to points west have plunged. The warehouse, greatly enlarged and refurbished with borrowed money, was less than a third occupied in goods to be transported. Thus, I spent the day on the edge of despair, reading the increasingly insistent letters from the banks. These I answered with deceitful replies, claiming the new orders had risen over the previous month, and the debt I had incurred would be paid with only the slight additional delay. At the end of this disheartening day, I rode west to an inn at the outskirts of the city. Being of no mind to feign merriment with the merchants and professional people who frequent the establishment in the business district. However, once I reached the inn, a glass of wine and a hearty stew of boar raised my spirits and prepared me for what lay ahead. I then resumed a westward course, thankful for pleasant autumn weather and a dry road free of ruts. The change in the color of the trees was as beautiful as any I could remember, providing welcome distraction from my growing unease regarding the two sisters I sought. I had known of these two since childhood. They had been warned to shun them. Almost never did they venture into the city, and I had not seen them for years. All details now forgotten, I remembered them only as middle-aged spinsters. More quickly than I could have chosen, the cabin reputed to the home of the two sisters became visible as I surmounted the crest of a hill and gazed down into a shallow valley. The cabin appeared in a rather poor state of repair and looked uninhabited, but for the smoke drifting from its chimney. After dismounting and securing the reins of my horse to an old piece of pagan statuary in the front of the cabin, I approached the door and knocked hesitantly. There was no response of any kind, and a part of me began to hope that none was forthcoming. I knocked a second time and still no sign of any stirring within. I turned to remount my horse, and a woman's voice broke silence. "Whom do you seek?" A glance back at the cabin door showed it still shut, but a dark-haired woman now stood at the left side of the cabin, some 10 yards away. She appeared more vigorous than I expected, likely at the transition from her decade to her fourth, a youthfulness still lingering. Then a second woman appeared at her side, appearing of similar age, visage, though slightly smaller in stature. Neither showed any hint of apprehension at the arrival of a stranger. As they approached, it took some effort to stand my ground. "Who are you? How may we be of service?" the second woman asked. "I am Charles Salisbury, a businessman in Philadelphia. My business, that is, has fallen upon hard times," I replied, reluctant to admit my misfortune even to those two strangers. "Pray, come inside and have tea." Inside of the cabin, a single room was clean and orderly, and they had bade me to be seated in a small round table near the hearth. In one corner of the room stood a old spinning wheel, and another 2 cupboards with multiple shelves held unaccountable bottles, jars, and tins. There was only one bed, its linked place against the wall opposite of the front door and adjacent to the partially open window. 4 tall posts, polished mahogany, supported the bed, and the remainder of the wooden furniture appeared to be equally well fashioned. The tea they had served was highly aromatic, extremely hot, and flavored with a variety of herbs, which gradually settled into the bottom of my cup. Instead of arousing me, the tea had a calming effect, perhaps taking me off my guard. After several swallows, life itself seemed too slow, and my mind latched upon one thing at a time, no longer racing from one conjecture to another. I was able to focus on individual sounds in the room, including a ticking of a single-handed clock atop the fireplace mantel. This mindfulness was most queer, yet pleasant. And with the two of them seated expectantly at the table, I began my story, now unable to withhold anything. They had offered no introduction of themselves, and I chose not to ask, suspecting there would be no meaningful response. Named them. The taller one would be Smirk, for the sneer wrestled constantly on their otherwise seeming welcoming smile. The shorter, who smiled not at all, became Malice. Her eerie stare unnerved me until the tea had completely taken hold. Both women listened intently, and never once interrupted to ask a question, simply nodding with understanding as I explained my situation. In my confession, I acknowledged my godless ambitions and the unwielding pride I had engendered so many fabrications. The close either of them came to making any rebuke occurred when Smirk said, "Wish us to help you out of your pit you dug." But fortunately, neither sister inquired as to why I believed they could do so. Had they asked, I would have felt compelled to answer. "Yet I entreat you. I see no way to help myself." After a moment's silence, the two women glanced at each other, and Malice gave her sister the merest of nods. Smirk rose and approached one of the cupboards, whereupon she took hold of a short, wide, cylindrical candle. This she placed with an open top glass container, almost twice the height of the candle, and brought it to the table and reseated herself. This candle will enable you to harness a power which cannot be exhausted. Its source is eternal, Smirk said. The candle was brown of old blood, but I made no inquiry regarding its origin. While the soul resides within the body, Malice continued, even a body ravaged by disease, it is safe. And when the body dies, the soul has neared its heavenly destination. Also, it is safe, provided the individual led a virtuous life. Yet there is a time during which every soul is vulnerable to those who are bold enough to entrap and harness it for their own purpose. This occurs just as the soul emerges from its corpse. For only a moment, it is helpless as a newborn baby emerging from its mother. Take this candle and place it at the bedside of one who is at death's door, Smirk said as she pushed it toward me. The dying individual must be of good moral character, and the candle must be lit just before the moment of death. Do not light the candle too soon, lest it melt completely and lose its flame at the instant at which the soul departs its body. The candle will flare suddenly with a bright blue light. Thus you will know you have succeeded. Succeeded, I asked. In capturing the soul and imprisoning it within the flame, Malice answered. Once trapped, the soul becomes unable to ascend toward its destination, and the energy it expends in vain is yours to harness until the candle is willfully snuffed and the soul set free. A shudder shook me, for in that moment I fully believed they possessed the power to bring about such an abomination. But how was I ever to bring myself to interdict the baptized and consecrated soul of a fellow Christian and withhold it from the beautiful vision? All this merely to escape a financial calamity of my own making? Smirk saw this incertitude take hold and said, once the flame has captured the soul, no harm will come to it, and the candle will burn indefinitely without further consumption of its substance. When your affairs have been set to rights, snuff the candle to release the soul, so it may continue its journey. Resist any temptation to take the soul beyond a restoration to what you once had. Contain your greed, seek nothing more. Still uncertain, yet unwilling to display any further lack of resolve, I accepted the candle and would later choose whether or not to employ it. What of my payment to you? I asked. You are in no position to pay us now, Malice answered. We will name a price once you are restored. With that, our meeting concluded, and I remounted my steed to return home. Weeks passed with no interruption of the downward spiral of my fortunes. Weeks during which I came to chastise myself for foolishly believing that the sisters could provide me with a solution. Yet a debate continued to rage within as to whether I would execute their plan and if the opportunity presented itself. The time was running out. I had received a writ of lien and eviction concerning my warehouse and all its contents. My creditors intended to sell everything at a time of severely depressed market prices and would not obtain sufficient funds to satisfy them. They would subsequently investigate my personal holdings and assets to make themselves whole. Departing soul had not occurred to me, but spurred by the writ of eviction, I devised an ingenious plan to find an elderly and righteous citizen near his or her natural death, and my church would be the vehicle for executing this plan. Showered with praise from patients, I volunteered to become one of those who visited the sick and dying. The church itself would supply me with the information and the pretext I needed to enter the homes of the most vulnerable, and if this plan failed, I was eventually forced to rely upon the charity of the church to mitigate the effects of my impending ruin. There would likely be a reservoir of goodwill upon which to draw. So occupied was I in lauding myself for this clever solution, I scarcely considered it predatory and heinous in nature. Within days, my sights were narrowed on an excellent prospect. The widow Huxford, aged 67, was in pitiful state of physical ruin, blind and ravaged by lockjaw and dropsy. She would welcome her imminent death as a merciful event. Her daughter, Anne Crofton, was exhausted from caring for her mother and a family of her own, and she had accepted with alacrity and gratitude my offer as a fellow church member to spend 2 nights a week with her infirm parent. My vigil began on a Sunday night at the widow Huxford's 2-story freshly painted home on Canal Street, where I was warmly greeted on the first floor of the house in the absence of an unpleasant odor, and the absence of the unpleasant odor associated with the cheaper varieties of the well oil further attested to the widow's affluence. Upstairs in the room she lay in bed, propped upright with 3 pillows, her dropsy and shortness of breath having progressed. Both her eyes were milky, opaque, and gangrenous bed sores on her backside produced a truly wretched odor, and informed me that the bed sores had worsened rapidly when her mother's failing respirations no longer permitted her to assume a recumbent position on her side. But she did not apologize for her mother's condition, and tended to her with great affection. My task seemed simple. I could hasten the widow's suffocation merely by removing the pillows which kept her upright, and thus be assured that her death would transpire while I was present with the candle afire. Having determined to carry out my plan on returning 3 nights later, I arrived promptly at 9 o'clock, assured Anne that I would not stray from her mother's bedside, and bade her good nights from the front door as she descended the stoop to return from to her own dwelling. Inside, I climbed the sturdy but creaking staircase and entered the widow's bedroom, finding her immobile, with eyelids closed. Had she already died? Was I too late? I strode to her bedside and placed my palm against her forehead, finding her feverish and damp. After observing her intensely for several additional moments, I detected the gentlest undulation of the nightgown that covered her chest. Yet the moment lacked the regular cadence of normal respiration. I had witnessed this pattern previously at the death of my own mother, in which progressively deeper and more rapid respirations were followed by a brief period which the respiration ceased entirely. This was repeated every 40 to 60, always leaving an observer wondering if the last breath had been taken. I removed the unholy candle from my valise and placed it on the nightstand next to an oil lamp, and procured a long match to transfer the flame upon the oil lamp to the candle. When the match flamed brightly, I withdrew it from the lamp and moved it to the opening of the glass in which the candle lay. But with the flaming match only an inch away from the candle wick, my arm froze in hesitation. As my determination widow had entered an episode of apnea more prolonged than its predecessors. My own breathing also ceased, as I wondered if she had taken her last breath before the brown candle was lit. Yet she began again. When I glanced back at the candle, it was aflame. This could only have occurred by means of force beckoning from within the candle rather than my own volition. The candle burned with a shuddering glow, throwing prancing silhouettes about the room. I thought of extinguishing the oil lamp, but decided that it's best not contain a full measure of oil on the marrow, and thus my vigil continued. Carriages passed in the streets below, and I watched as a nearly full moon was first shrouded by the passages of clouds, and still she breathed. I checked the candle and found to my alarm that less than a third of its brown substance remained. Was this frail old woman defying me? Thus far, I had done nothing. I had done nothing that could be construed as harmful. But with the candle continuing to shrink seemingly quicker than before, I snatched her pillows away and left her completely supine. Now I had truly crossed a bridge and burnt it behind me. The minutes passed, and still she breathed. She was defying me. She was defying me, somehow mindful of my impending ruin and waste, and waiting for the candle to extinguish itself before drawing her final breath at her wild or willful defiance. Grasping a pillow with both hands, I slammed it over her slack face and dropped a knee upon her small, bony chest to make respiration twice impossible. Another glimpse of the candle revealed that it still burned. Increasing, the pressure of my knee against her chest suddenly caused her breastbone to snap, and a moment later the candle flared as Smirk and Malice had promised. Her soul was trapped, and it was mine. Despair. All is lost. All is lost. All has been taken. Even my beautiful Patience. Everyone thinks ill of her, certain that she callously chosen to abandon me as we plummeted towards financial ruin. In truth, financial ruin was not the cause of her flight to her parents. I discovered this the moment I returned home on the morning after the widow Huxford's demise. Hearing me enter our home, Patience rushed from the kitchen to greet me. But the moment our eyes met, all joy left her, and she halted several feet away. She stared at me as if a stranger or an intruder. All that she uttered was, "Oh." "Patience, what is it? What is wrong?" I asked as I approached her with extended arms to embrace her. She took several steps back, covered her mouth with her hand, and regarded me in uneasy silence and confusion. Had the stain of murder descended upon me? A stain that was all too apparent to her? She turned her back on me and quickly ascended the staircase, whereupon I rushed to the large mirror in her foyer to search for what had repulsed her. Exhaustion from a lack of sleep and something which normally evoked her salacious nature was evident, but an unmistakable darkness had also crept into my countenance. Now, and I liked it not at all. My entreaties to her were as futile as those directed to my creditors. She simply was no longer mine to cherish. I soon found myself possessing little more than my personal items, a small sum of money that I had disclosed to no one, and the mysterious candle that continued to burn day after day after day. Those who observed my protective, covetous manner regarded the candle, thought me deranged, and I did little to discourage this attitude, since it caused them to leave me in peace. Left to my own devices, and living alone in a cheaply furnished, poorly lit room for rent, I examined the events of the preceding weeks, focusing primarily on the encounter with the two witches. How else to regard them? The candle was no less enchanted than a goose which lays golden eggs, but had brought me nothing but ruin. Had it not flared brightly at the very moment of the widow Huxford's death, as promised by Smirk and Malice, And do I not flinch when a twig snaps upon underfoot, the echo of a cracking breastbone scolding me? Presently, I came upon a frightful realization. The candle was no talisman or a channel of good fortune, but rather a cursed object or a weapon, and that I was nothing more than the sisters' means procurement. They must have known well, full well, of the candle's ruinous effect, and that I must return to them seeking redress, and the evil instrument in my possession. How had I become sufficiently gullible to believe that a scheme requiring the death of a God-fearing, righteous woman, a member of my own congregation, which bring me anything but despair? My murderous rage at an imagined defiance on the widow's part had arisen from nothing more than her innocent gasping at the last tendrils of a God-given life. What to do? What to do, indeed? If the sister's plan was to obtain this wretched candle, I might yet thwart them by extinguishing the candle, and the widow's soul could be freed, and this cursed object need never fall into their hands. Their possession, the use of it, would only bring misery to others. Thus might I redeem myself and vow to live righteously until the end of my days. But the appeal of this plan began to fade when I considered that I may have blundered in some way while capturing the widow's soul. But how? Whipsawed by this conundrum, I paced my small dark room in such a resolute plan. If I extinguished the candle before seeking the sisters' counsel, I would surely spend the rest of my life wondering if I had discarded an opportunity for greater wealth, perhaps even regaining the love and admiration of my dear patients. This propelled me to make a decision. I would return to Smirk and Malice with the candle, but carry a weapon of my own. With a borrowed steed, I retraced my previous journey westward, this time stopping around midday at the same establishment where I slept 4 weeks prior. Emerging from the inn after a satisfying meal, I was tempted by light rain and distant thunder to remain there, perhaps overnight, but ultimately choose to continue my journey to conserve what little money remained. Before long, I regretted that decision. A storm soaking and chilling me, its thunder pummeling my ears, terrifying my steed, the road became enveloped in mud, slowing my progress, causing my trek to seem interminable. Yet I knew there was no risk. No risk. The inscrutable candle will be extinguished. Upon finally arriving at the sister's cabin, I thumped on the front door impatiently with my entire forearm and demanded entrance. The door abruptly swung inward, and Malice beckoned me to the inside surface of the door. Had they expected me on such a wretched day? "Please be," Malice began, but halted as I extracted the candle with its glass enclosure from a leather sack and laid it upon their table. Both women took a step back from it, then stared at me. "What have you done?" Smirk demanded. "I have followed your every instruction and trapped the soul of a righteous woman, a member of my own congregation. But disaster and despair have become my daily lot." I answered in an accusatory tone, "Everything has been taken from me. My wife has fled to her parents." Wordlessly, both sisters slowly approached the candle for a closer inspection. I believing that they would wish to determine precisely how little of the brown substance remained, but I was mistaken. That was not their intention. "How do you perceive the flame?" Smirks asked, turning to me with eyes blazing. "As you can plainly see, it is bright crimson," I replied, and it flared at the instant of emerging soul of an old woman was entrapped. In a slow, threatening tone, Malice uttered, "You." You must take that candle away from here at once and never return. It possesses a grievous threat. You killed her, didn't you? I had to. The candle was near to extinguish. Yet on she lingered. Simple instructions were given. You were given, Malice continued, penetrating me with her eerie stare. You were to be in attendance at the moment of death, not cause it. Worse, the soul you entrapped in the flame is no more virtuous than your own. Its destiny is eternal punishment. How is that possible? Everyone knew her to be saintly and a pious woman, I pleaded. She most likely murdered her husband. No saint himself, I'd wager. Smirk answer. It is such a simple thing to poison a man's porridge. But what threat does the candle pose? I continued in a voice that both demanded and pleaded. The candle is willfully extinguished. The widow's soul, inexorably pulled into the pit, will drag with it a soul like itself, one to delight the demons, one with which to bargain with them. Smirk said. I was about to ask whose soul will it choose, when the answer leapt upon me. I would be its victim, for I had murdered her. I had murdered the widow Huxford. These two witches were no paragons of virtue, but I gathered that neither of them had committed the most heinous of crimes. Yet they wanted me gone. They wanted me gone quickly, and with the flame at my side. But what am I to do? I pleaded unabashedly, my pride now smothered in desperation. You must search for another, Malice answered. One whose crimes are darker than your own. Only in this company may you smother the flame. But the widow's soul would reward the demons with one more hideous than your own. Accepting admonition, I took my leave, never to see either of them again. I knew I must rid myself of this accursed candle. Only then might my fortunes be restored and the redemption of my soul sought. Months had passed, and I've been unable to rebuild my life. The ill fortune of the red-flamed candle thwarts me at my every turn. This is nothing, for it to burn live in penury and continue my quest for someone more deserving in damnation than I. Surely such an individual can be found among the population of 80,000, for is there anything more certain than the reprobate nature of man? Charity from my congregation and an occasional stunt of manual labor enabled me to keep body and soul together. Each night, I renew my search for a monster in the city of brotherly love. The crimson flame is now enclosed within a brass lantern. Its metal handle creaks in a regular cadence as it sways by my side. Some of the regulars on the street and the alleys continue to jeer me. Diogenes, if you haven't found an honest man by now, give up. Others more perceptive remain silent and avoid me. My inability to assess character, evidence to my foolhardy selection of the widow Huxford months ago, has meant that I must witness a crime so heartless that the widow be compelled to drag someone other than myself into the pit. Only then will I extinguish the flame, and I believe my quest to be right-minded, for surely it is no sin to ensnare the damned. So that was a long, long story. 4,000 words. Whew. I'm thirsty. It is a long story. It's a slow burn. No pun intended with the candle. But it relates. It relates to capturing souls. It relates to, does a soul exist? Can you capture it? like I said, it's a story of greed. It's a story of a guy being overcome by greed. But so the guy is at the end of his, well, the guy's at the end of his ropes. His business is failing. He's in a crazy amount of debt. Go to various banks. Owes him a lot of money. Can't get out of it. Now, in those times, even a businessman, you might know some that do this, will go to turn to supernatural means, supernatural things for solutions. You see it. You might know of a business person or so that may believe in some sort of they might do something to believe that will help them. It'll be like supernatural or give them luck. If they do something that it's like kind of like a behavior that means nothing, that doesn't really do anything, but they believe it's going to bestow upon them good luck and great fortune. Even though it's like extremely superstitious to engage in that behavior, they're going to do so. So I see that there. A lot of people come to this channel because of the Guntwave stuff, of the Guntwave drama stuff. If you're new to that, if you don't know what that is, we talk about failures and internet losers like Ethan Ralph and PPP and things like that. So there are people out. I'll use Ethan Ralph. If you don't know who he is, we'll just say Ethan Ralph. Ethan Ralph is consumed. Ethan Ralph is a good example of someone who's at the end of his rope. His kill stream is a failure. He used to be really good. His kill stream podcast, but now it is not what he just used to be. And he's trying everything he can to help the business or help his podcast. He purchases things like a camera, a high-end camera that requires his own power supply, but it doesn't even work. He takes steps to try to make it better. Has he turned to some sort of supernatural thing? Well, he is someone who's very prideful. Someone who is led by pride to failure. His pride leads him to his failure. I could see someone like Ethan Ralph doing something like this, engaging something that he would believe would give him good luck, even though it's something stupid or silly, like lighting a candle. And here in this story, it's the candle thing it's a test. It's a test of the main character, Diogenes. Well, they call him that. Charles is his real name. Can he choose somebody of good nature, of good virtue, of a soul to capture? When I first read this, I was like, what does capturing a soul, how does that benefit a business? How does that benefit a guy's life? How does it get you good fortune? But it's not really about that. He thinks it will because he's turning to his, like I said, he can't do anything else. He already has immense debt, and he already used loans. He exhausted through the loans he can get. He can't get any more. So, with no one else to turn to, nothing else to do, he turns to witches and supernatural things, and pagan stuff, Wiccan stuff. Doesn't listen to the instructions right. Led by greed. Or, they greed. Could be fear too. Instead of capturing a soul of a woman that dies, he kills her. So, ruins that too. And it turns out the woman, that soul that he captured, is not a righteous person, even though she was a member of the congregation, which doesn't matter, right? If you go to church, how many people go to church with you that are just like awful human beings? As an example, PPP is a failed holy man who If you know who he is, let's just say if you don't know who he is, that's great. PPP is a Canadian, a 300-pound Canadian loser who is a failed holy man who his father was a preacher or ordained minister or something, and then their father was one too or whatever, but just failure after failure. Like he's not that. He's the black sheep. He's the one that can't be that. That will never be that because he fails in that. And he's someone who went to church. He's someone who talks about the Bible and the gospel and preaches it, talks about it. Yet he lives a life of gambling, lives a life of sin, gluttony, being a sloth. I mean, wrath, consumed by wrath, pretty bad. So, yeah. Just because somebody goes to church doesn't mean that they are a good person, right? I mean, you see that quite a bit on the internet. You see people that talk about the gospel, talk about the Bible, whatever, but they don't know what they're talking about. Or even if they seem very convincing that they know what they're talking about, chances are their personal life is utter shit. You even see this on TV with big names like Joel Osteen. Okay? He's not a good person. So, but to bring this back around to the beginning, what is a soul, and can a soul be captured? It's a good questions. I'll leave that to y'all. How's it going, Ours of Blast? Oh, that's cool. Yeah, these horror shows, I know, it's just a handful of people. Not even. That's fine. It is what it is. Prideful. No, I'm just doing what I do. Anyway. You guys have a good one. I'll take it easy.
It's known that Vanadine has conducted classified biological research for the National Security Organization. Any reason for our viewers to be concerned?
None whatsoever. Although the research animals which were kept here have been destroyed, absolutely no toxic elements have been released into
Who escaped?
GH3.
The dog.